duo for everybody who's joining us today. We're glad to have you, and we appreciate you coming and and being here with us today with our elder for his powerful presentation that he's about to put forth today. And the title of his talk is "Problem with Using aAmu or Euro-Asian Ways of Knowing to Translate the Mdu Ntr." And we also have a book that he wrote called "The Ambiguous Nature of Words" that's out right now. Monica, if you can put the link to that in the chat, because I can't do it right now. And you guys can go and purchase that if you want to. So I'm gonna go ahead and get off here. And Baba, I'm gonna turn it over to you. You the man of the hour, So I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, well, let's get started. The problem with using aAmu, your Asian ideas and ways of knowing to translate the Mdu Ntr. The breadth and scope of this discourse modestly endeavors to advance the compelling, though discursive argument for the methodological and epistemological importance of learning and utilizing African languages, concepts, terminologies in the reconstruction, restoration, and reconnection of our African movement. Now, this is very important because why do we study Kemet? We're trying to reconnect our sanity, so to speak. And we need to use African ideas and concepts to do that. And it's almost impossible using languages that are conceived based on our discretion, based on our destruction. I think few of us are aware of the poisonous nature of this European language that we use and impact it has on our consciousness. This is some of the ideas and stuff I go into in my book. Is to show that there's a difference between the way Africans use words and the way Europeans use words. Africans use words basically as means to describe the world around us and the world within us. Europeans use languages to obfuscate the reality of white supremacy that they are forcing on the world by way of words and concepts. So that should be very clear that our problem is us using European, or I should say a foundation of our enslavement is using European ideas and concepts to understand and express the world. The problem with using these ideas like metaphysics, esoteric, spirituality, God, and religion is because they don't make any sense. African philosophical ideas and concepts are founded in nature. What does metaphysics mean? Does somebody in the audience want to offer a definition for esoteric spirituality? What do these concepts mean? Does anybody have any good idea? Okay. I can hear everybody saying, that's what you're here for. We're not here to answer these questions, you are. Okay, so the problem with the concept of metaphysics, look at what the word means. It means, or it's used to mean beyond the physical. So in terms of beyond the physical, how do you know anything that's beyond the physical? Our physical foundation in nature allows us to have shared experiences. So if we're dealing with concepts and ideas that are so-called metaphysical, that are beyond nature, how do you know them accurately? You can know them, you can think that you understand them in your mind, but how do you actually express them? For instance, could somebody tell me, and I know nobody's not gonna do it, but I'm gonna ask the question anyway. How do you do something spiritually? The foundation of our spirit, the foundation of spirituality, of what we call spirituality, is what you do physically. We tend to use words in such an ambiguous way until we think that spirituality is actually something that someone can do. All of our actions are physical. So one of the problems of using these European ideas and concepts it's like, as I say, it's like jumping from the fire into the frying pan. So, hey, you're going to find it just as hot in the frying pan. So in opposition to that view, we have what's called the correct method, the tip-heseb. Now this is a Meta-Netcher word, as is the word aAmu. Once again, the goal of this discourse is to offer words and ideas from this African language to substitute the problematic words that we use because of our miseducation. So the first one, the aAmu, what is this? Excuse me. aAmu is a term that a lot of African scholars have started to use because a lot of the terminology we use make it seem as if our only enemies are people who call themselves white people or Europeans. But any close examination of the Meta-Netcher text that deals with how they dealt with foreigners will see that there had always been foreigners inside of the Nile Valley. As long as they came in and wasn't causing any hassle, then they were allowed to stay. The problem becomes once they started to become a majority and they started to take over the land. So we find that there's a group of these people, and we in order to give this term modern meaning, we group all these people together and jointly just call them aAmu. That way we don't have to go into and say, these are Arabs, these are Orientals, these are, all these different people, these are, these are Europeans. We can group all of them together and just call them aAmu. And once again, this is a concept that we can find expressed in Kemet. The aAmu waged, I should say, the Africans waged a great battle, many wars against these aAmu. Okay, so now, also as opposed to this metaphysical way, we have a precise method. The precise method, the correct method, also comes from a Meta-Netcher word, and it is called tip-heseb, tip-heseb, the correct method. The correct method is to understand that all languages are constructed to express logic. So you have to learn how the logic is constructed in that particular language. So the metaphysical spiritual researchers have not did that. They have a whole different method that they use, and they like to use what I like to call the look-alike method. And so they have taken certain Meta-Netcher symbols, and then they look at European expressions of them that they think are expressive of the ideas expressed in the Meta-Netcher symbols. So we get things like this. Look at these things. So, but if you notice, there's no Meta-Netcher. They do all of this symbolic representation of stuff, but there's no text. Anytime these symbols are described, they are described based on European ideas and concepts. The form of the tetragrammaton can also be seen in relation to the four corners of a pyramid. I think most of us in here might know what the tetragrammaton is. It's basically Jewish four letters to represent their concept of divinity. It's YVUV is how it is pronounced. It has nothing to do with Kemet. So we look at all these ideas and stuff. Where is precognitive information? Oh, okay, that's it. In the ancient times, dreams were perceived as being the domain of spirits, whereas precognitive information can be accessed. So they even imply that the pyramid was a dream incubation center where you could go and have your dreams interpreted and that type of thing. But we see that there's no text for this. So here we have the inside of the Grand Pyramid, inside of the Mur, as being depicted as having a relationship with the brain. What relationship? What what does the only thing you get here is a breakdown of a European's definition of parts of the brain. Now, similarly, I must say that Africans have a similar also have a breakdown of the interior of the brain. One of the best models of this I've seen is in what's this book by I forgot the guy's name. Okay, Schwarzwälder, and his books on Egyptian metaphysics has a good. He gives you a breakdown of the brain and the Netcher terms used to describe its various parts. So, like I tell people, you have to read everything because, you know, as been said in the Netcher wisdom text, you can get knowledge even from the washwomen who are you know, at the pond washing clothes. So you have to read everything, and you find that there's some good information that you can discern from a lot of bad information. So they continue with this lookalike thing. So once again, we have the crown of Kemet being used to represent something that they use no textual foundation to explain. So the question we have to learn to ask these people is, where is the textual evidence? Where is the textual foundation? There's a malaise that is happening to African-centered scholars, and that is we're starting to adapt these crazy metaphysical ideas and concepts. So I heard an African-centered scholar say that in order to access your ancestors, you could tap into your DNA. And I was saying, well, hold up. How about doing something more practical like reading a book? You know, ancestors, especially in Kemet, they left written information. There's no need to do something as impractical as trying to access your DNA, which nobody even knows what that means. And that's the problem with a lot of these metaphysical statements. When you examine them, they have no meaning whatsoever. And one major Netcher concepts that befuddles all of them is this concept of nature. Is the concept of Netcher, which is nature. So there was a video that was circled around among some of us about 2 weeks ago where Rkhty, it was a short, I think about 8-minute section of a lecture that Rkhty did, where she was talking about that nature and Netcher is basically just the same thing. So that Netcher is not a God. Netcher is a principle of nature. So I would ask people, what is a God? A God is a concept that controls and rules everything, anything it's in contact with. God, and some people have said that, well, God is equal unto nature. And I said, no, that's not true. Because people intercede. They use God to intercede over nature because they know that God is supreme. God is over everything. Well, that's not how the Netcher rule works, but we're going to get more into that later on. Right now, we are examining these Eurasian ideas and concepts. So we don't realize that this concept of God is a holdover from a white Egyptologist. One of the early writers about Kemet was Wallace Budge. And as much as people dog out Wallace Budge, we still use a lot of his ideas and concepts. The whole description of Kemet as a religion comes from Budge. So why do we take this guy's word with such reverence? And that's one of the problems that I find with these, with the majority of these metaphysical, spiritual people, is that like they have used and taken Budge's terminology and his psychological description of Kemet as being a religion as being a fact. So we have here the Puat of the gods of Anu. Now, this is a concept that these metaphysical people use over and over again. is called the Great Company of Gods. That's what they call it. And they use these company of gods to express a very problematic symbol that has become part of the metaphysical circle, and that is the tree of life. There is no textual evidence for any such structure in Kemet. So what these metaphysical folks have done, they have taken the images from the Kabbalah, which is, the philosophical writings, these philosophical speculations of ancient Jewish texts, which in comparison to Kemet is not really ancient at all. So what they have did, they've taken the Hebrew represented in this chart, and now they superimpose Kemetic Netcher without understanding each language. The people who use this, I've never seen them use the meta Netcher or understand it or express it as a language. They're always interpreting individual symbols, never translating statements. And they take these meta Netcher symbols and they apply them over, replacing the Hebrew, and then sell this image as if it is an actual Kemetic conceptualization. Once again, we have to ask them. Matter of fact, don't ask them, demand. Show me the text. Show me some image in Kemet that is illustrated like this. In Kemet, we do have trees. However, the trees are actually trees. So when we talk about a tree giving nourishment, there's no guess about it here. You can actually see the suckling of the tip. Well, that's nourishment. We have Min Kepara, which is the instability that we call Hatshepsut. Sinq F, Mut F, Aset. And this is, he is suckled by his mother, Aset. So see that there's no guesswork here. Whereas when we look at these flow charts here, you don't know what's going on. On top of that, when they describe how these flow charts function, they're so oppositional. The higher half is perceived as being over the lower half. The lower half is defined as your animal self, and the upper half is defined as your spiritual self. What they do is put the individual in conflict with himself. How is this even remotely African? African philosophical system is to align the individual's unseen and seen aspect of himself and his environment. Nothing about any spiritual ascension. So, in their own words, this is how one of the major metaphysical researchers characterize the tree of life. In Kemet, in Kemetian myth, the tree is a life-sustaining, enlightening source, and the tree goddess is the divinity goddess of wisdom who lives in the tree and extends its bounty to the spiritual aspirant. Now, that's another statement that we need to offer somebody some type of reward for. What the hell is a spiritual aspirant? This brother uses this statement throughout his work, and I cannot figure out what does it mean. We have to always look at people's languages, and we assume that we understand, or I should say, we assume that their words are actually real. How do you aspire to something spiritually? So anyway, it extends its boundary to the spiritual aspirant. Thus, the tree goddess motif is fundamental in ancient Egyptian iconography. It symbolizes the goddess in general, but the goddess Nut and Het in particular as compassionate, life-giving female divine essences. Okay, now this time I'm serious. Somebody on the side, will you please look up the word divine and post it or tell us in the group what the hell does it mean? The goddess sustains as a mother, looking after her children, nourishing them with physical and spiritual substance. And when their time is up on earth, she reaches down and lifts them up to heaven. Okay, first off, why do we call the Netcher and Netcheru gods and goddesses? We're just parroting what this old white man has said. He calls them God and goddesses. Why should we, knowing that he's not translating this language based on his own cultural context, but he's using the European concepts and ideas because he couldn't understand precisely what it is he was reading. So in order to understand, in order to understand this information, he had to put it in terms and ideas in which made sense to him. The problem is we have made his crazy ideas make sense to us too. So here we have, once again, talking about the tree of life. The extraordinary myth is that it achieved the teaching not through the use of abstract fears, as in Kabbalism, but through abstract anthropomorphic as well as composite anthropomorphic zoomorphic realms governed by the Netcheru. What do we say about gods? What do gods do? Gods control and govern stuff. So when they look at the Netcheru, they also describe them because they're calling them gods and goddesses. They see them as being gods and goddesses, and they have never read texts that explain to them what they are. They also see the Netcheru as governing stuff. The Netcherus are graphic representation of things, but they are not those things themselves. There's nothing about the Netcheru that will connect you to any type of so-called spiritual energy. These are ways to get people to believe in nonsense. But we have this tree of life has become a popular Kemetic symbol. Where is the evidence? So they have us dealing with this tree of life because supposedly people are involved in spiritual systems of captivation, ascension. Well, we have to realize there have been people out here teaching this stuff for over 30 years now. We should start seeing some proof of what they say. For example, we have this brother, right? Okay. Now, let's read on the back of the book what he says. Did you know that the art of meditation was practiced in ancient Egypt over 5,000 years ago? Based on what? What is meditation, and why has the world seen a resurgence in interest and practice of meditation? The world? This is what Europeans and people who think like Europeans do. Assume that the way Europeans are represent the way the whole world is. So because there have been some interest in the US on meditation, he has assumed that, hold up, the whole world is into this. Most people have learned about meditation through the teachings of Indian yogas. However, the practitioners of yoga in ancient Egypt had already worked out the intricacies of the human mind and the method to purify the psychophysical complex that is a human being in order to allow a spiritual aspirant, I told you, there's that word again, to discover spiritual enlightenment. What? I'm a brother of the street, and I found that most of these spiritual people were full of it. And like I say, from being in the streets, I found out that a person's word was far more important than any type of spiritual aspirant or spiritual knowledge. The only thing you can judge a person by is how you interact with them physically. So this whole focus on spiritualness is a problem. We have a problem with these Europeans. We're not gonna beat them being spiritualists. This volume contains the first recorded meditation practices in our historical era, and also provides a comprehensive, detailed study of the techniques used in ancient Egypt for attaining super consciousness. I repeat, this brother been teaching this for over 30 years. Where is this super consciousness at? Where is the evidence of it? Discover the peace and joy of meditation. Learn the purpose of and how to practice meditation. Learn how to control the breath so that as to control emotion. control emotions? Why would you want to do that? Learn how to use words of power, chant for spiritual transformation. What the hell does that mean? If someone transform spiritually, it probably means that they're dead. If you how do you transform spiritually in a physical state? Discover the oldest meditation techniques in history, the meditation of oneness with the divine serpent power meditation, and the slowness meditation. This serpent power, we're going to get into a little later because, believe it or not, Kemet does have serpent power, but not in the way that not how he hooks it up here. Okay, thus, I must read from over here now. Okay, the Netcher are cosmic forces symbolizes gods and goddess principles. These Netcher represents the natural forces, but also the energies that go to compose the human personality, thus allowing their practitioner, here we go again with this word, to connect from the human to the divine, to the divine and beyond. Does anybody find a definition for divine and sacred yet? Okay, we are still waiting. But look at this.
Yeah,
now.
it's in the chat.
Oh,
do you want us to read
Can I
it?
read it? Yes.
Oh, let's see. Well, let's see. Sia, do you want to read what you posted?
Sure, I looked up, I found that as defined by dictionary.com, for instance,
Right.
It's identified as an adjective, and it has actually 10 different references, meanings, beginning with of or relating to a god, especially the supreme being, addressed, appropriated is a strange word, or devoted to God, or a god, religious, sacred. The third, divine worship, proceeding from God, divine laws, divine guidance. So they use the word to define the word, which is also it confirms what you're saying in terms of the confusion used to never get to the core of a meaning. God-like, characteristic of or befitting a deity. Divine magnanimity. Magnanimity, yes. So just, again, of a word to continue to confuse the concept. Right. Heavenly, celestial, the divine kingdom.
Okay.
So any kingdom, anything related to, of, or pertaining to God, a supreme being.
Exactly.
We also
see,
offer
this is the problem.
Stop there.
Thank you very much. Also, let me say, Sia is one of my oldest friends. And when you get to be as old as we are, friends are important. Why? Because they start dying off.
Tell the truth, African. Tell the truth.
So, thus, allowing a partition to connect from the human to the divine, to God. So all this stuff is based on God. It's and we have to understand God has nothing to do in Kemet. The God that people in the U.S., Africans, world over, have been introduced to this concept by way of slavery. We like to say, well, the God concept. And I say, but that's problematic because you can't have the concept before the word. They kind of go together. So when we say God concept, we like to use it to mean that everybody has a God concept. And even some that was popular among African-centered circles to say that Yahweh, Ra, all these different names of what people call divinities and gods were all expressions of the same concept. And that's not true. Whoever says that, and I know a lot of scholars do, don't understand that culture shapes words. Words do not have the same meaning across culture. There are some concepts like Netcher that is very difficult to define with just one word. because they don't, some of the concepts are so connected until you can't, one word doesn't fit because under different conditions, that same concept can have a different expression. So continuing with this, don't worry, we're going to get to the, out of this soon, okay? But we really need to go over this because this stuff is popular. The majority of my students, I have to what I call sew up or heal the split in their brains. They come thinking that there's an actually spiritual world that they interact with that is superior than the physical world. And it's like that. But if you ask anybody what they do for spiritual practices, they would tell you what they do physically, because we have to understand that we're born in this world to get stuff done, to do things. In Kemet, they had a statement, Iri Neb Ket. Iri Ned Ket Neb. And that means the one, or I should say, the master of doing things, or the master of doing all things. But the point here is that in Kemet, it was about doing things. This whole spirituality is concepts and ideas that Westerners, people who think like white people, have forced on us. This whole, like I said, this whole spirituality and having a divided world from having a finite division between the physical and spiritual world does not exist. Anytime somebody talk to me about spirituality, I ask them, where is it at? Show it to me, point it out to me. So let's get back to the tree of life. The tree of life originates from Africa. Practice spiritually. How you practice something spiritually? This crazy language. Practice spiritually by Africans, understood to this day by Africans. What Africans? Where they at? Please, somebody show me. The problem with these ideas is we don't realize that they're like, we are perpetuating the mindset that we have been educated by. And this is the problem with the way that Europeans conceptualize the world is expressed excellently by Jacob Krellers in this book. In sum, the Aryan worldview of antiquity, which includes the classical Greeks, is based on a fundamental alienation assumption of cosmic conflict, hostility between male and female principles, warfare between man and nature, competition and strife amongst men, and slavery as a natural human institution. This Euro-Asian orientation, which is deeply embedded in the Aryan worldview, can be called fundamental alienation. Such is the legacy of ancient Western culture. Man must rework or dominate nature in order to survive and prosper. That's what you see now. We see that these rich Europeans are dividing up the world amongst themselves based on the minerals. Lately, we've heard this white supremacist idiot that these white people has elected as president talking about he wants to buy or control Greenland. Not because of the people, but because there's not a lot of people there. There's a whole lot of land that they can mine. So they look at the world as something that they can use, a benefit, something that can be exploited. We don't realize that capitalism and this Western worldview is based on exploitations. This never comes out in the history books and what our children learn in school. So they go out, or I should say that they are made to desire the things that Europeans desire, without understanding that, once again, their world is made in opposition to us. The so-called Western world exists because of the state that they have reduced Africa to. When I was in school recently, I was taking a subject called environmental science. Very interesting subject. And they were showing how they're like the most the commodity that's sold, I have to say, the second commodity that is marketed outside of oil, the second largest commodity is tea, tea, the coffee. So he asked a question: why is the countries where coffee is grown poor, and the places where coffee is drank is not poor? You would think that the people who supply the coffee to the people, the rich people, they will get paid for it. But that's the whole imbalance that the world exists up under. The Westerners, white people, people who define themselves as white, abuse the whole world for their benefit. That's the problem. But if we look at these metaphysical people, the problem is you. The problem is your animal nature. Here, it says it right here. To follow one's feelings, desires, to do it because you like it and so on, is to identify with the animal sphere. Number 10, Geb. Now, we saw in these Tree of Life that these circles, these spheres, were used to express different parts of the physical and spiritual aspects of the person. Jeb, Kahabit, animal part of the spirit. This part of the spirit sets the foundation of the problem to be overcome. We are born with this part of our spirit already programmed for the preservation of our survival. Its basic program can be reduced to an attraction like cravings, desire for what gives us pleasure, and repulsion, dislike for what causes aversion or pain. But, this is my emphasis, but if not transcended, it becomes the greatest impediment to our spiritual development. And what does spiritual development have to do with fighting and ending or even understanding white supremacy? If you don't understand white supremacy, how are you going to deal with it? None of this stuff deals with understanding white supremacy. The fight here has become with the individual within himself. You got to control the animal aspect of yourself, which is ridiculous. And then how does this impede your initiation? Well, your spiritual development. Who wants to be developed spiritually? What is it good for? Okay, this is a further way that they use the animal nature, what they call the animal nature of the individual, and displays it in a very non-Kemetic way to bend the problem. So here they call Set, and here they talk about Set, the Netcher, Setesh. Set sends his agent to look for and kill the boy king. This symbolizes the antagonistic reaction to our animal spirit and lower intellect towards our efforts to alter our behavior patterns to reflect the values of our higher divine nature. The third stage of initiation marks the completion of the preparation of the initiate for higher initiation. There's always more to come. We must note that thus far, the initiate has not been directed to confront his lower nature. In fact, the method around it has been one of persuasion. And what that, come on, people, can you even understand this language? For years, I have been amazed of how does a book that doesn't make any sense sell so much? I've never met anyone who could explain the concepts in this book. Even when we had Netcher here many years ago. Matter of fact, then he was called Rostron. He couldn't explain the concepts he was presenting then. This is when he first started coming up with his ideas of the great oracle of Jehudi and the Egyptian system of spiritual cultivation. This was 30, 40 years ago. And one reason Netcher was never popular here, because when we came here, we asked him questions that he couldn't answer. And so he was never able to get a strong following here in Detroit, because the conscious members of the Detroit African-centered community had big problems with Netcher when he came here. Can you imagine the effect of people's consciousness and spirituality? Every time they engaged in sex, their attentions were directed to the achievement of a spiritual goal. I think it is. The feeling you get is it's pretty strong. What if they thought of themselves as engaging in not mere carnal acts, but as divine beings, using energies of the lower part of their spirit to bring forth the higher? Tricky language, very tricky language. Doesn't mean anything. Listen, the majority of the time, you don't have sex to reproduce children. Most people generally have sex because of the desire to have sex. The result of that desire has been such that it's a means that we bring forth life. Sometimes not willingly, but it happens. So you have to take these type of things into account so that this whole thing of using your imagination is a problem that we have learned from white people. What white people, an ontological habit that white people have is this. They will take any idea, no matter how ridiculous, as being actual, and then use it to convince you that it's real. When all they're doing is all we're doing is living out the white supremacist ideas that white people give us. And it's that simple. We don't realize it. Okay, now let's look at some of the, this is really when he gets going. It is best to avoid animal products, including fish, eggs, chickens, and dairy, which are not vegetables, in case you have not noticed. Besides, from having an adverse effect on your health, animal protein and fat are the greatest dietary sources of cancer, heart disease, rheumatoid illness. You will not be able to fulfill the requirement of the Maat stage of initiation. You gotta remember that there's a Maat stage of initiation. What that is, I don't even think he really knows. But anyway, meat eating by humans portrays a lack of understanding of the interdependence between the makeup of the human digestive system and food intended for it. Food intended for it. Okay. We were meat eaters. If we were meat eaters, we could eat it raw without worrying about infections. We would relish the sight and taste and smell of raw blood. At the sight of a bleeding animal, we would salivate and succumb to hunger pains. The fact that we have to tenderize meat through cooking and other means show that it was not made, that our teeth was not made for meat. You do know that when you cook meat, you're helping it to, you can say it's a system of digestion. It's pre-digestion. You're helping to break the meat down because that's what the meat's gonna do in the body anyway. It's gonna be broken down by the enzymes and the acid in the body for it to be used, for that energy to be used by the body. Its basic program can be reduced to an abstraction like cravings and desires for what gives us pleasure and revulsion. Okay, we read that early. So that this guy definitely has nothing to do with Kemet. Kemet, if you just look at the language, you can see that human beings and animals are placed on even footing. Almost every word in Kemet involves the use of an animal or a human being, and most of the time, both. So where does this dislike and hate of animals come from? His books are called Mdu Ntr. It should be based on Kemet. Now, did they eat meat in Kemet? Let's take a look. Now, of course they did. I'm not going to show you a bunch of text. Everybody can, see that. But we're going to look at this article by Jonathan Shaw on the excavation of 2 cities of the pyramid builders. And this is by, or a lot of this work was done by archaeologist Mark Lanier. I think he's from the University of Michigan or Michigan State. shows that Kemetic workers consume much fish and meat. On the floor of another, the excavation found what looked like ears of wheat, suggesting another bakery. But these turned out to be fish grills. The site was littered with them and with fish fins, cardinal cranos, parts. It turned out to be a place for processing and consuming fish. For a city with few residents, someone seemed to be eating a lot of loaves, bread and fish. They went on to analyze this, and they found that this is from another researcher, and they found that the pyramid builders. So these were the cities that they went into, and they were excavating these cities where the workers who built the merge, the pyramids, where they lived. And what they found was they identified tremendous quantities of cattle, sheep, and goat bones, enough to feed several thousand people, even if they ate meat every day. Now, they even give you some exact numbers. It took 4,000 pounds of meat per day to feed the laborers who built Egypt pyramids, according to one researcher, Richard Reddings. Now, think about this. It's hot as I don't know what over there. You think them people did all that work eating vegetables? And something else that Rkhty Amen said. When you eat vegetables, you can get food poisoning from vegetables also, not just meat. You can get food poisoning from any food you consume. So once again, this stuff is just, come on now, that's what you have to say. It is absolutely ridiculous. But when we take our models for understanding Kemet from old white European scholars, that's how we get this whole understanding of Kemet as being a religion with God and goddesses who have to be worshipped and that type of thing. Okay, let's move out of this and let's get into what's involved in the correct method. The tip-heseb, the correct method for the study of Kemet is by way of learning to read the Mdu Ntr text. Let me get something to drink real quick. My throat is getting a little dry.
I told Baba this presentation would be worth repeating quarterly because this is some amazing information.
Okay, let's keep going. Okay, now I had, in terms of the correct method, I would like to offer a suggestion for a new way to translate Medu Netcher. We generally translate Medu Netcher as being sacred or divine words. And one reason I had you look up the terms is because we can see that we're still basically relating the Medu Netcher to gods. When we say divine words, sacred words, sound good, but it's not really how they're used in the way that Western thinkers, European trained thinkers, conceptualize concepts relating to God and sacred divinity and this type thing. One basic difference is this. When you hear Africans talk about God and and divine and sacred, they mean everything. When we hear Western trained thinkers, trained by white people, these split-brain Cartesian, thinkers, is that they think they use God, divinity, and divine to mean other than. So see, that's a big problem. This is why we just can't take words and think that they mean the same thing cross culture, because they do not. So to avoid that, for English thinkers, I make the suggestion that we translate Mdu Ntr as the words of nature. Why? Because that's literally what they are. When you look at how they're composed of everything that exists in nature. There are no metaphysical representation in Kemet, because metaphysical would be pure abstraction, wouldn't have any meaning for the people. So we're going to translate Mdu Ntr as the words of nature. Now, why do we study Mdu Ntr? The language must be Egyptian language. This is a quote from Dr. Theophile Obenga in his book, African Humanities, the Archaeology of the Discipline. Egyptian language, Mdu Ntr, must be learned technically, because this language is the only key to understanding Kemet from an intrinsic paradigm. Positive discussions about Kemet is no longer sufficient if our aim is to advance the discipline with sound scholarship. In order for us to have a deep and exciting dialogue with Kemet, it is necessary for us to master the Egyptian language. Thus, this requirement is imperative, for without it, we have no beginning. This is a major problem. We have attempted to communicate with Kemet without being able to read the language. So what are you really communicating with? You're communicating with the ideas that a lot of people, primarily Europeans, have come along and said, this is what the language says. We have to get away from that. So once again, the Netcher does not represent a guide. It represents principles of nature. Now, some European scholars understand this. This is Allen, who's written one of the best grammar books, and he has this to say about the Netchers. Children of Jeb and Nut are primary forces of life. Wasir is the power of birth, regeneration. Aset, the principle of motherhood. Set, originally Setesh, on the force of male sexuality, and Neptus, or the lady of the house, with the female, and Aset are female counterparts. Oh, shoot. Neptus, the female, is the female counterpart of Set. So we see that when you look at them as forces of nature, they become things you can more better understand. And we have to realize that they are graphic representation of these forces. They are not those forces themselves. All language itself, and Mdu Ntr is a language. All languages are the graphic and phonetic representation of things of nature. They're not those things themselves. This seems to be a problem that a lot of the metaphysical folks are confused by. They think that by chanting and doing all these different things, that you could actually, by chanting to these words and concepts, that they will actually hook you up to those words and concepts. Now, mind you, there's no proof of anybody doing this, but that doesn't stop people from getting hoodwinked into being initiated into their systems where they tell you this is what is going to happen to you. This is what you will achieve. I repeat, if somebody have achieved this super consciousness that this brother just talked about, that you can achieve through his Maat meditation, please demonstrate it for us, because it is valuable that we learn any skill that we can to help us fight white supremacy. But if you can't show me that really any ideas that's not focused on fighting white supremacy for Black people are useless. They will not help us in our effort of what we have to do to not only retain our sanity, but to retain our sanity so we know how to fight properly this enemy who has transformed our youth into niggers. And if this doesn't make people upset, I don't know what to say. So one reason that we study Mdu Ntr in what we call a correct method, the tip-heseb method, is because it enables us to get inside of the minds of the people. This is where the magic happens. The people of Kemet thought in a very interesting way. They had a way of associating ideas and concepts that shouldn't be associated with each other. Whereas our society, ideas and concepts based on word use are so fragmented until it's very difficult to understand the unity that is expressed in the world. In Kemet, they understood this unity and they used it in the language in a very practical, magical manner. Okay, let's look at this word Rkhty. The word Rkhty, you can see, has the same two symbols. I can't remember what the symbol was, but it has two different determinatives. The determinative, now Rkhty means to read, right? But it also means to suckle and to nourishment. This makes a connection that is logical and practical and true. Reading is the way that you nourish the mind. Now, people have started to understand this even without understanding the Mdu Ntr language. My point is that in Kemet is not something that you have to guess at. It's something that, based on word structure, that they make plain and they put it inside your head in a direct manner. Now, it has often been said that words represents 1,000 words. Well, if you understand that, you should understand that symbols, pictures are a more efficient way to communicate because ideas can be expressed and understood directly. So what they did was, at the end of the word, to drive the idea home, they would put a determinative. So for reading, they put a determinative with a man with his finger in his mouth, which still denotes the idea of nourishment and supplement, because you're taking it, it deals with the mouth. Now, this symbol is also used that we know that this is a sense. It represents the notion of a sense also. So we have the word here, reading, with a man knowing, this is a human activity. But then also is represented by the breast. And we know that obviously when you see the breast, there's no guesswork, just like in the tree of life. When I showed the tree in Kemet, the insubidi was being suckled by a breast. All human beings, unless there was a problem, would be suckled by a breast. So the whole concept, you can see how holistic this idea and concepts are. But they did this all throughout their language. Why you study the language is so that you can understand this type of intellectual connectedness in a very practical, intimate way. Not just somebody explaining it to you, you can see it. See, I'm explaining it to you now because I saw it. But when you read the text, you get to see how it's functioned. Now, I'm just showing you the idea now, but the text will show you how these concepts function together to express one another. Another concept that's very interesting is this concept of SbA. Some people have pronounced it Saba. The convention is SbA. It means to teach, but it also means the exact same word, means teaching, star, and a doorway. Now, this SbA, the first SbA here that deals with teaching, is very interesting. Why? Because we have a man here with a stick. So we know that sometimes teaching requires individual to encounter some hardship, some pain. Now, this pain can come about from two ways. One student who I have a very funny relationship with, he likes to call my Mdu Ntr class the crunk boxing Mdu Ntr class. Because he said it was like coming and engaged in a boxing match. Another funny incident, I had a sister came to class one day and she brought a first aid kit. And I said, like, well, I felt bad. I said, I beat y'all up so bad that you need a first aid kit? You said, no, this is for you. Because if you keep doing this, you're going to need this kit. Of course, I got a good laugh out of that. I said, okay, I got you. I got you. But anyway, I'm showing you how that, from an African standpoint, we understand this stick is most appropriate. It's only with these crazy Europeans that come up with that, you don't beat your kids. No, we don't beat our kids, but it's the same thing I tell people about a critique. Critique from people who love you is to make you better. Getting your butt whipped by your parents is to make you better. So people look at this man with a stick as being negative. No, pain is a good instructor. Believe me, I went to Marine Corps boot camp. I know the value of pain. Okay, so then we have another word, Saba, with a star and the sun. And we had another word, Saba, with the symbol for a house, a home, a door, in this case, a door to the house. Okay, this is what Obenga says this about these three symbols. The symbol star is common to these three words. One can understand that to teach is to open the door of the student's mind in order to let it shine like a star. The sun is the star of the star of the solar system. It brings light, energy, and life. In the same manner, to teach, Siba, is to bring light and life to the spirit's brain by touching the spirit. Egyptian instruction fundamentally deals with spirit. Now, once again, you have to realize this is an African using the word spirit. He doesn't mean other than. He means the total essence of the individual, his seen and unseen aspects. Now, these are some other ideas that I think a lot of you may have heard these already. I've given this presentation on this information a lot of my presentation, but I'm going to go through it again for those who may not have heard it. Once again, we studied Mdu Ntr to come up with new practical ideas based on an African mindset that would allow us to go beyond the poison of using in the words that we use to try to understand and describe reality. Now, children, of course, are always a problem in terms of they have energy and they never settle down. Anybody who has to interact with a toddler knows that, like, wow, they can get going. Okay, so let's look at the word sejim and what does it imply here? Now, sejim means to listen. It means to hear, listen, obey, and then judge. But it's very interesting because the symbols themselves, remember I was saying how symbols are very important. I'm going to interject here that pictures, symbols, are a far more sophisticated way to communicate. A language that composed of pictures is far more dynamic. It becomes multidimensional. The letters of a okay, look at the letters up here. These letters for the word instructions is used to give you the phonetics of this word, but it doesn't tell you anything about the word. Let's look at the word sejim and how it's written, and let's look at what the symbols themselves tell you about the concept. So we have a cow's ear. A cow's ear, when you look at a cow, its ears are always moving because it's observing its environment by way of sound based on its ears. Then we look at the owl. Now this owl bird, which is called an M bird, because it makes the M sound, is very interesting. Because why? What does a sound? What does an owl do? An owl carefully, intensely sits quietly, observe its environment. His neck can move almost 360 degrees, and it has exceptional hearing and exceptional eyesight. So an owl constantly observes the environment, but when an owl attacks, it attacks with deadly, silent effects, actions based on stealthness. You can't hear it, right? And it swoops down with very intense energy. What is interesting? Because if you don't tell your child to sit down and be quiet, because they can't, it's an impossibility for some children at almost any age, but ask them to adopt the position of sejim. That means sit down, or I should say sit or stand, but observe your environment. Be quiet, observe your environment, listen to it, observe it, so that when you act, you can act more efficiently. Well, this is an outstanding concept. So this is one example that shows the value of the Medu Ntr language for teaching our children. There are a ton of concepts in here, and I just showed you another one in terms of shadi, to read. Each family, your children should have their own libraries. You should have a library, your children should have their own library. If you go into someone's house and there's no library, the people in the house is in trouble, because the only way that they get information is through the white man's boob tube. Now, other good ideas that we have gotten from the Medu Ntr language is this whole understanding that South is up for us. And this is so symbolic that we should use it as a signpost. Anybody who has this positioning of the map should understands that we live in a world turned upside down. So that means that we can't take any idea or concept at face value. We must always examine how any idea or concept functions in the world to either promote white supremacy, or I should say promote the myth of living under the concept of myths of white supremacy. This is a way for us to understand that this has to be our goal, and that is to rewrite the world for ourselves, not for the sake of the world, but for the sake of ourselves. Medu Ntr has a ton of concepts and ideas. So another one, a very interesting way of looking at the world, we have a natural division that we feel that one's heart and their minds are in separate places. Your heart is lower than your mind in terms of its placement in the body. Now, and then they put more value in the mind in Western society. Well, in Kemet, the word for thoughts is Rkhty. Now, very interesting, because when you look at this word, you think it's called Rkhty Amen. But the Eb symbol is a determinative to let you know they're talking about basically what is in the front of one's heart. What is the foremost of one's heart? What are your foremost ideas and concepts? So this is a way that, once again, we need to heal the split that we have between the heart and the mind. In this society, a person can write something or say something and then say that, well, that's not really what I meant. That's not, I'm not really like that. That's not what's in my heart. Well, hold up. Did you write it? Well, yes, but that's not really how I felt. Oh, yes, it is. I'm sorry. You cannot separate your heart and mind from your actions, because your heart, the actions are based on what's in your heart and your mind. So in Kemet, they had one word to express them both, and that was eb. So this symbol right here is oftentimes used to express the heart and mind by itself. The full word is Rkhty. This eb symbol, once again, is a determinative to make more precise the understanding of the word. So they're letting you know that your heart, that your thoughts have a direct relationship with your heart. Not true in Western society. Now, at the recent ASCAP conference, we had a concept that came up called the aAmu. Now, this is I was really upset and excited at the same time. Why? Because aAmu is one of the most fascinating concepts in Kemet. It represents, it is what's called a causative, and it represents the reading of ritual text to transform the deceased into a state that was called Ak-Eker. Now, Ak-Eker means an excellent spirit. The full title was Ak-Eker in Ra, and it means the excellent spirit of Ra. And this is a statement from a book that we wrote, our study group wrote many years ago. So it says, Duwasir, the excellent spirit of Ra, Kamui, true voice. So this was the man's name sitting right here. This is Kamui. He was a sculptor in Kemet. The stela of Kamui and stelas in general are scaled down versions of an older, more elaborate structure that Egyptologists call a false door. The term in Mdu Ntr used to denote a stellar Uj, Waj or Uj, and Abu. Now, these were not false doors. These were, in our book, we call them car doors. They're spiritual doors. Earlier, these were large structures like this built in tombs so that they allowed the deceased and the individual, because this is a doorway. So they're not false, but because they're not operated by human beings going through them, these are doorways made for the spirit of the deceased. So they had ceremonies, festivals, where individuals would come into these tombs and they would share food with the deceased by way of these doorways. They have some pictures in Kemet of the deceased walking through these doorways. Now, in the New Kingdom, they became much smaller, rounded, and they were used inside of the homes of the deceased. So these were like shrines, or I should say portals, that the individuals had inside their homes so that they could commune with the deceased. So when Egyptologists called them false doors, it was like, well, what's false about them? And not only that, what the hell? Once again, we've gotten so used to this tricky language till we don't even question it. What the hell is a false door? It's, it's a craziness, false door. Okay, but this was a very important ritual for the dead. Now, just recently, a young man showed me a paper that was showing that, and one thing we have to realize, all these concepts changed over time because the people of Kemet had a very long history. So a lot of times we don't take into account when we study these concepts how they evolved into, various stages and aspects of other ideas and concepts. That was also these new ideas and concepts retain some of the old meaning that the concepts express. But well, anyway, that's very interesting. That would be almost a whole nother lecture within itself of how they kept ideas and changed ideas all at the same time. A very Kemetic, I should say, a very unique Kemetic way of looking at things. Okay, now let's take a look at these rituals here. So here we have the mini Sa'aku, which is voiced by the Rkhty Amen. Now, this is the guy who read the ritual books, and we see him right here reading the papyrus. Right now, when you see this left hand extended like that, this is some of this Kemetic sign language. This was how they use sign language to call forth the spirit of the deceased. We see this action a lot in many texts. Whenever you see this individual with his left hand up like this, because they are doing the gesture to call forth the ka of the deceased. This is a very elaborate ceremony. We see it right up here. Sa'aku. The priest performing the Sa'aku ritual recitments, ritual recitations to spiritualize the ka of the deceased. So this was a process, a very long process that they went through with the deceased. Another interesting concept that's not expressed here is the concept of the tekenu. The tekenu was a process that they went through where they put a priest into a trance, and this priest accompanied the deceased on his road to the Duat. Now, this word, Si'aku, is a very fascinating word. Okay, the full construction is called a causative. The S in front of it means to cause. So that's why Si'aku means to cause a spiritual transformation. But the root of the word is ak. This Ak is one of the most fascinating concepts in Kemet. And we need to have more discussions about it. Too many of our discussions about Kemet are not based upon the text themselves, but on what other people say the text means. We have to stop that because too much of these other people are not African scholars, and the orientation of the discussion takes you away from African concepts and knowledge. So the general word here is Ak. Ak and Aket are two concepts you really need to have more understanding of. So let me do this real quick. I want to show you the various okay, I have enough here. I won't change the screen. Okay, now, so we have Ak. Ak basically means light and spirit. That's the root of the word Siaku. And then we have Aket. Aket is this concept that's very hard for us to understand based on our Western training. But this is a unique, special type of goodness. This is goodness as an attribute of everything. So we don't really see in Western society, we don't see emotions described as being concepts that actually exist in the world. They tend to exist in people, but we don't see them. We don't see emotions as existing in nature itself and in plants and animals. But that's, once again, that's a problem with the society in which we find ourselves living in. So let's take a deeper look at this concept. So we have Ak, it means spirit, the spirit state. It can mean spirit once again, in terms of, it could be ancestral spirit. It can be sunlight, sunshine, to become a spirit, glorious, splendid, beneficial, useful, and profitable. So see, this concept of Ak and Aket, it's like, what? Wow. Aket, what is good, profitable, useful. Aket, power, mastery. Aket, the eye of God. Aket, flame. Aket, horizon. Well, this is a magnificent word. So let's take a look at the text and see how some of these ideas are expressed in the text. Now, this was a lesson we had in one of our grammar classes. So this translation is over 30 years old, and it was an exercise that Rkhty gave us and tried to understand the relative forms. Okay, let's start from the beginning. Ahe, Sim, Har-E, Enekpu, Enekha, Emi, Kau. Now this is very interesting, okay? They fight concerning me, what I am. I am a radiant being. So this is right here, a nuke. I am what? A radiant being. So here we have the word Ak, with this symbol of this seated man here as being a radiant being. Then we have the word Emi. So Emi means within the mist. So I like to funk this up a little bit. And this would be, they fight concerning me, who I be. I be a radiant being who be all up in the sunshine. That's literally, that's what this says. Emi means to be within the mist. Sunshine. So I'm saying that, okay. They're saying that not, they are the ones who be all up in the sunshine. The forms and shapes of the body of Netcher. So of course, a long time ago, I still translated Netcher as God. One thing is studying this language, you have to grow if you're not hard-headed. So I would say now the forms and shapes of the body of Netcher. Now, interesting, look at this word Keperu. Keperu here is a noun, but Keper means to transform. So what they're telling you is that the forms of the body of the Netcher are also in a state of transformation themselves. Enukwa, nu in aku, ini aku, kamu, kamu in amun, Joseph. And this says that, like, I am one of those, once again, radiant beings that be all up in the sunshine, created by atum Jezef, which is reflective pronoun use, himself. Then I said, who come into being as the flowers of his eyes, who transforms as the flowers of his eyes. Then we have SbA NF. Now I said here, that which he created. But that would be that which he causes to come into being, and that which he spiritualized. So we have SbA NF, that which he causes to be like a spirit. So this is some of the beautiful ways that they use this word Ak. We have Ak and Aku, but you can see how Ak is basically related to light and light energy. Okay, now we're getting to the end here, slowly but surely. Okay, we have this concept of Ak also as the Uraeus. Now, the Uraeus, of course, have become known to us as this symbol, that symbol of a snake that's on the forehead of the emblems for the Insubiti and and women, Netcher and Rkhty. Okay, now this is very interesting because this always represents feminine energy. Anytime you see this snake, this cobra, it represents feminine energy. Now, interesting, because this energy does have let's sit for a minute. This symbol, this snake here, Wajid, does represent fire. Now, those people who are heavily into the metaphysics perspective might see this as being Kundalini energy, because Wajid definitely is a fire serpent. So, like I said, people who study metaphysics might say, we do have the Kundalini energy in Kemet represented by Wajid. And I would say, well, show me the text. And let's examine the text. So first, let's look at the Book of Coming Forth. And this is an English translation. And it says, we hear, O mighty of magic, fiery serpent, even you who fashion in and form, and from whom he has come forth. O-N, the serpent goddess has born you, the great goddess has fashioned you. Okay, so here we just see that it is that this serpent definitely is some energy, is some feminine energy, and is associated with the Netcher. Okay, let's look at another one. And it says, the great cobra diadem on the head has castrated the punishable one, the evil natured snake. It has severed its vertebrae. The fire has consumed him. The devouring flame has devoured him. Aset has ward off Neptus, Nebet has done away with him. So here we see that this serpent energy represents fire that does damage to the enemy or the opponent. But okay, let's look at some text here that has some pictures in it, so we can actually see what's going on. So here we have up at the top, we have these pictures, and this is from the book of understanding what goes on in the Diop, the underworld. So we have here these female images up here with snakes around their shoulders. So what do? The upper register has two things. In the first, 12 goddesses are wearing fire-spitting serpents around their shoulders. Their function described in the text below. So let's see, do they function like Kundalini energy? Okay, she who appears in beauty. Now this is very interesting. Neferet Khrew, This is like more than just appearing in beauty. This is like somebody who is so beautiful. She radiates and shines like the sun. She who prepares the way of Ra, the lady of the powers of the earth. Then we have the chiefess of the cobras. That's what this is. Now, this word for cobra, wajet, is very interesting because wajet means to be green. To be green means to what? Because we know in this society, they are promoting greenness now. So greenness represents renewal, prosperity, and this type of thing. We can see it in the text with the very next symbol. We have sawajet ibatwe, haret, ibedwe, haret. And it means she who makes the banks of the sky prosper. Once again, we see this sawajit. It means to make renewal, to make profit, to make prosper, to make green. That's what this means. So when you translate, people, I have to tell people, translation is not word substitution. It's understanding the concept and then using the best terms to express it. So what you find is that, like, a lot of times, you don't disagree wholeheartedly with the translation, but you can see ways in which they have used their cultural expressions to not really express what's there in an African manner. Okay, so then she says, she who rejoices in the two lands, she who is elevated in her form, she who is powerful by her magic. Now, this is very interesting because this is Sekhmet. That's what this says. This says Sekhmet in Khrew S. So this would be Sekhmet, who is powerful in her akus now. And that's because aku can be translated in many different ways. So this would be she who is powerful in her ways of goodness. That would be one way that you could express that. Now they say who is powerful by her magic power. A little problematic because aku doesn't really mean magic. It means that which is powerful, or I should say that which is good, which is and what a benefit is good and beneficial. So this would be she was powerful by way of her goodness. That would be one way you could translate that. She who acclaims Ra in his form, she who beholds the corpse when its bark stops. Now, she who comes forth from the front of Ra. This is what we're talking about. So that's what you can see how it's explaining what's going on at the top. All these individuals are different types of female energy that's happening in, or I should say, that is adding assistance to Ra in the Duat. In the Duat, Ra is at a weakened state. And we see that almost all of the entities of the Duat is helping Ra in his passage through it. So one of the main helpers is Wajid, this serpent energy. So then we have the last one is Lady of the Urea serpents in the bark of millions, in Ra's bark of millions. So that's what that is. Now, continuing, they are like this in their own bodies. Their Urea serpents go forth from their shoulders when this great Netcher has reached its place. They belong to those who follow this Netcher. It is the flames in the mouth of their Urea serpents, which fend off Apopis from Ra in the eastern gateway of the horizon. So every morning when the sun is first appearing, what is that light? That light comes from these serpents firing up Apopis. So in Kemet, fire is used in two ways. Fire is used to light, fire is used for light, and fire is used for destruction. So in Western side, we really don't see fire as being used for light, because for us, we have electricity. But in Kemet, light was like in Kemet, fire was a light source. It's very important to remember because it's one of the dual ways that you will find Wadjet, the serpent used in Kemet. It's used to protect by burning up Ra's enemy. Also, it's used for light to light Ra's way. So this is in Kemet, everything operates in a dual manner, and that dual manner of things were always taken into account. Okay, we have another one where we have serpents at the top, cobras, and what do? So we have the names, and he calls them, of course, goddesses, who lighten the darkness of the Duop. Now, remember, I told you that they didn't have electricity, so one of the jobs of these fire serpents was to light the way. So we have Netcher, we have the flaming one. So that's one, all these serpents up here, they are giving you what they're doing down here, and they go down. So we have Wapset, and that's the burning one, Wadjet, and we have the cobra once again, and then we have she with the hurtful flame, then she who cuts, the radiant one, the protectress of the land, the executioner of the enemies, she with the beautiful appearance. So once again, this beautiful appearance is like, we have to understand what this word Khrew, it means to shine brightly like the sun. So just not beautiful. It's a type of beautifulness, like expressive of the brightness of the sun. Then we have the fiery one, the peaceful one. So all these are the various Netcher rules. Now, none of them function in any type of way of what? Of Kundalini. None of them function in any type of way of Kundalini. So I've shown you, and this is what you should expect, or this is what you should demand for anyone who talks about Kemet. Show you some text. Without the text, really, you can't, you don't have any way of checking them. The text provide a backup. I tell people all the time, don't tell me what it said, show me the text, and I'll tell you what it says. But the text is the foundation, not what someone says. We need to have more discussions about Kemet based up on the text. Okay, I know I'm running a little long here, so let me rush this along a little bit. Okay, I want to deal with the concept of Khrew. The concept of Khrew is another one of these fascinating ideas in Kemet that need more understanding and expression based upon the text. I'm going to show you this is how a lot of Western ideas and concepts are instilled in the text by, if you can only read the English that is written, then you are at a loss to really understand what's going on. So let's look at this. This is from Wallace Bud. It starts out with Khrew, Mdu Ntr, and it says the creator of what came into being. That is to say, I produce myself. Creator. Khrew doesn't mean creator. Creator is a noun. Khrew means it's a verb, or it represents, even as a noun, it represents the notion of a process, something that is moving. But creator, how does that fit? Okay, I translate this. Same statement is, I am the process which becomes and exists as the transformation. That is to say, I produce myself. Now, if you say the creator of something, what is a creator? A creator is something that stands off from, above, and makes something. Well, Khrew doesn't make anything. Khrew represents the concept of transformation. So Khrew doesn't create, Khrew transforms. But if you can only read the English, it says, Bud says the creator. So you're stuck, and then in your brain, you have the concept of creator. There's a paper they're gonna put the link in the chat that I wrote that deals with how Khrew represents the concept of how everything came into being without the use of a creator. I ask people, where does God come from? Nobody never asked that question. Because in Kemet, they know that would be an impractical way. They don't start with an individual creator like that, I should say. One of their major creation stories do not start with the concept of a creator. It starts with a process. Kepler represents a process. So that means that I am the process which becomes all that exists. Now, it's not just the process. This is how they express this. Rush a little bit. Okay. One statement that we have is Khrew, Khrew rather. And that means I transform as the process, the system of transformation, which becomes all the systems of transformations, everything. But what this is showing is a very unique way of looking at the world. Everything is of the same substance. When you have a God as a creator, that means that he's at the top and everything that he makes, his creations are under him. And why does he do that? So that they can worship him. Well, this is woo. Fantasy. I mean, stupidity as fantasy. I should say stupidity posed as practical logic. Here, we have I transform as the process of transformation, which becomes all that exists. So you see, there's no separation. Here, there's no separation between creator and what's being created. So everything is of the same substance. Everything is of the same energy. This is very difficult for us to realize here, because even those people who call themselves conscious use the concept of the Most High. They no longer use God. Now they substituted God for the Most High. But they change words, but keep the same psychological, cultural understanding of the concept. That's why we have to drop it all together. These European concepts do not help us understand the nuances and the practical way in which our ancestors thought. Okay, I'm gonna rest this up a little bit. Okay, we have this concept here that deals with this says Yem Aku N-E, M-Ed-E, Semitic, Sedeti, N-E, M-R-E. And this is saying, now this is difficult to translate, right? Therein, and this is Aket N-E, I Aket it with my heart. What does that mean? Now, Wallace Buzz says that this translates as I work a charm with my heart. What does that mean? A charm. But if we understand that Aket is goodness, he's saying that therein, with the goodness, with this Aket, with this goodness in my heart, that I laid a foundation with my sight. Well, this is a creation process, all based on concepts and things you can understand, because it's given existence a goodness as a foundation. Because this word Akti says what? I act with my heart. So this is like special goodness that's really beyond the understanding, or I should say, that really goes beyond an expression in English. But he's saying that he worked this incredible goodness in his heart. Well, this lays a foundation for emotions. Goodness is being a principal part of all that exists. And then he laid a foundation with his sight, which means that he saw this with clarity. Not God who created human beings and then they can hide from him. Well, no, I mean, it doesn't make sense once again, because the Netcher rule, by saying this, that he did this with his sight, is saying he did this with clear, open vision. There was nothing ambiguous about it. It was very clear and precise. It was something he could plainly see. Now, once again, this is, very sophisticated way of thinking. Now, this concept, this says the births of this great Netcher are in, this is Khrew NF, his forms of Khrew. So we have Mess, we have Meset, Netcher Pen, AI, M, Khrew, NF, excuse me, FN, Khrew. So now this is very important because the grammar here is telling you that all these concepts in A, which is what? The birth of this great Netcher, which is Ra, are all contained in the forms of Khrew. So once again, this is a way that they thought of how they make everything everything a part of everything else. So that all of these forms, all the forms of existence is represented by this primary form of Khrew. This Khrew is a form of Ra when he first is born in the morning. So all the forms of existence are represented in this primary form of Khrew. Once again, they put everything is related to everything else. We don't have all these separate entities, rocks and human beings made separately from each other. And by being made separately from each other, you don't see the connection between them. So this is very important because it shows the way that our ancestors thought. So we have here that all of this, or I should say the symbol in the middle of this M bird represents a preposition or what's called what's called the M of predication, which means being in the place of, or in the state of, or in the place of. So all of these births of the Netcher are as, or exist as, the forms of Khrew. So oftentimes people use all of these expressions of Khrew as if they represent the same thing. This form of Khrew is a very special use, and it's always used the same way to represent the totality of everything in one form. That's what this represents, a very sophisticated way of looking at things. Okay, now we are, okay, the last concept, Maat. Maat has been talked about a great deal, but what we see is that Maat, okay, understand Maat as a system or choreographic behavior that regulates and allow various diverse complex systems to function in relations to each other to support a larger system in a beneficial, supportive, and harmonious manner. Now, what's important here is Maat is something that is choreographed based on behavior. It can be the behavior between two, as we have here. The thing about Maat is that when you see it expressed in nature, there's a certain aesthetic element to it. So even in something as simple as dance, what is it? It's Maat, it's choreographed movement so that they have a precise purpose. We see this with humans, but we also see it in animals. I would like to make the suggestion that our ancestors were looking at nature when they came up with this concept of Maat, and they saw that if they choreographed a society in a precise manner, it could function just like we see in nature, and that is systems that are employed for benefit of the group. So what you can't see here is that there's a hawk or a something that is trying to pick off. See it? I don't think you can. But in some instances, there's something that you can see that there's a hawk trying to feed up on these birds. But by this choreographed movement, they appear as one, and it's harder for them to get eaten. So Maat is a choreographed, it's choreographed behavior that we should employ so that we can achieve our greatest visions. Now look at this. So in Kemet, we have this chart, and this chart is showing you how the people of Kemet choreographed Maat to function within their community. So Maat is something that you do. It's behavior that you have to incorporate. And if you incorporate it, if you line it up correctly, it allows your society to operate as one unit. This is what they did in Kemetic. So this is a chart from Obenga showing you how Maat was choreographed in their society. So we have spheres of influence, of its reality and dimensions of significance. So we have the sacred, the cosmos, but also the sacred has to be lined up with theology, with cosmos, dimension of masculine and female Netcher, with politics, but then they have to line up this way. So it's religion has to have expressions of theology, has to be based on cosmic myth, has to be based on a divine monarchy. And so that all of these systems in a society has to be lined up to reflect off one another. And this is what the Kemet, when Kemet was doing this, they were trying to emulate these systems of nature that operated under Maat as one. So here we have ants building a bridge for themselves. And this bridge is so they can attack this wasp nest, which we can't see over here. Okay, it'll go over. You'll see it in a minute. But you see, what they're showing you is the power when you have large groups of entity. In our case, it would be people. If we just learn how to operate as one according to Maat. And here, this is one of my best examples here. So these are fish. But look how they have choreographed their movement. Now, each one of them are feeding, but they choreographed this so that each one can feed. From the top, they go all the way down, and each one feeds. But look at this when it's formed under Maat. Look at the beauty of the aesthetics. That's what Maat does. It represents beauty itself, but it's beauty based on coordinated behavior of the individuals. Okay. Now, for examples, or I should say for getting contact with how to study the meta-Netcher based on a tip-heseb, a correct method, I recommend two websites. Of course, there are more, but I strongly recommend these two because they have been doing this for 20 years now or longer, and they have produced some outstanding students, one of which is about to speak. I see him over there with that red hat on, the Gentleman. Yes, so the two sites I associate with and have been associated with for long time now. I'm very proud of my work at BB2 Mikasa. This is an outstanding website. It's ran by one of our most exceptional young linguists, Brother Abadile Kambam. Then we have, of course, the website ran by Rkhty Amen, who is a living legend. That's the best I can say. And she is responsible for teaching more non-scholar African-centered people, one of which is me, than any other person I know. She has specialized her whole career on teaching outside of the academy. So her job was to put this correct method into the hands of the common brother and sister in the street, so to speak. This was the goal of Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben used to always say, I do not teach for academics. I teach for the common brother and sister in the street. I am a product of Dr. Ben's teaching. in terms of like, I don't have a degree. I forgot I have to stop saying that. I do have a degree. I went back to school when I was 60, and I got a degree. Of course, at 60, being back at school with my background, I gave the professors the blues. But at the same time, I stayed on the dean's list. So this is a tightrope that many of us have to walk as you go through the academy. One reason I didn't stay in and get a master's and a PhD was because I could not stand the hoops that they send you through, and I could not stand being in classes and keeping my mouth shut so that I could, get out of there with a decent grade. The only time I really kind of act up when there were younger people, younger black people in the class, I would purposely act up so that they would know that don't accept this stuff that this man say, without understanding that it's a perspective. A lot of stuff is not based on facts. It's based on, they give information to promote living under the myths of white supremacy. Okay, that's my presentation. Hopefully it didn't bore y'all too much, like everybody got through it. I really appreciate you guys' attendance. If you have any questions or a statement, Chris? If you have any statements, now is the time for them.
This is Sia. I appreciate your long time consistency in bringing forth a way of thinking that should be utilized every day. Teach your children. People say, well, I insisted on showing children the pitfalls so they would know them when they saw them. If you do not show incorrect thinking as it exists for those attempting to delve into our studies, we will be confused and tricked. So I appreciate that you consistently work to reveal the falsehoods. Thank you.
I'm trying. Okay, no one else?
SbA, you mentioned an author early on that you had trouble remembering his name, and I didn't quite get that name. I want to read his work. Can you let us know what that name is?
Lubitz. Yes, it's Swartzweiler de Lubitz. Now, don't ask me to spell it, though. But
yeah, how is that spelled?
yes, we'll have to get his book. Okay, okay. But his books are called The Temple of Man. Now, there's a small pamphlet called The Temple of Man. It's not the one this information is from. The Temple of Man is a huge encyclopedic type work in 2 volumes where he deals with let's see, what he would call sacred geometry, but he puts out some pretty good information too. Like all Europeans, you have to learn to read between the lines. But he was one of the people I read a lot before I learned how to translate the Netcher. Consequently, I've come to find some problems with his work, but you will with all these Europeans because they're not writing from our cultural perspective. But once again, I read everything. So yes, I read. He has his works and he has his family works. His wife and daughter also put out some pretty interesting books about Kemet that you have to read them with a grain of salt.
Dua.
SbA. This is Angel. I'm one of the Kronk Academy students.
Yes.
And yeah, just much appreciated the work that you do.
I think you guys appreciate it.
Will there be any way to get this recording?
Monica, that's your job.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. We're recording it and yeah, we can send a link to everybody who attended. And then most likely we'll be putting it up on the school's YouTube page in a couple months. So
Okay.
yeah, I have everybody's email from when they registered. So we're recording and we'll save it to the cloud and then just send a link to everyone.
Dua.
So if you just have the time to visit our websites, you'll find them full of information. You know, the way that which a BB Toomey was conceived was very interesting, because instead of going to YouTube like everybody else, this brother said that I'm going to do YouTube, or I'll do YouTube by starting my own platform. So a BB Toomey a BB Toomey, as they changed the name, bbtoomey.com, has become a very unique and special website where you can go and get a Black nationalist perspective. And if you look around us now, that's become hard. You don't really see Black nationalism as being as powerful concept used by us as it used to be, and that's because of our miseducation. So we try to reproduce anything that these Europeans show us, but because they never show us aspects of our culture, we don't try to reproduce any of the positive aspects from our culture. So we go out and we start a temple, right? Instead of starting a community center. So when I was coming up, activists was involved in the neighborhoods. Now, activists, well, first off, there aren't any activists, and we are becoming so religious orientated until it's taken away from the practical work we have to do in our neighborhoods. So we form these religious groups, a temple. What is a temple? We have a Kemetic temple. Are they really a temple? In Kemet, a temple is formed, it's first off, it's conceptualized for a precise purpose. Then it was lined up with certain positions on the land and the sky. Well, are any of these temples formulated like that? No. These Kemetic temples are really us calling another man's house a temple. And that's exactly what it is, because we don't design them nor build them. So if you don't design or build them, how are they a temple? They are called temples, but you are in another man's house, not a temple. But, you know, we don't realize this is an ontological habit that we learn from these Europeans, and that is make up a word and then act like that word is real. But I mean real, act like it has a real physical presence. So what they call a temple is not a temple, it's a house. But because they have this temple word imagination in their brain, they say it's a temple, but it's not really a temple. But once again, that's living out the fantasies in our minds. In Africa, words are used to express the world around you as precisely and accurately as possible. That's not the case in this Western world. So we always have to examine words given to us by these Europeans to use to engage the world with. We have to question them, and for the most part, we have to get rid of them. Why? Because as the symbol states right here, we live in a world turned upside down. If you really understand that, you have to understand that what has turned our world upside down. The ideas we use to understand and engage the world cause us to be niggers and people without a strong physical presence. Or I should say, we have a strong physical presence without a strong physical effect in terms of our actions being beneficial to us as a group, not as individuals. Okay, you all, I think I have talked you talked your ears off. hopefully you got something from this conversation that we've had, from this information I tried to give you. All of my work is to stimulate conversation. I work under this. You never know what's been communicated until you get a response. Because once you get the response, if it wasn't what you communicated, you have to either check yourself, check your work, or check the person who is engaging it. Okay.
Jacqueline, did you have something you'd like to say?
Long time no hear.
Yeah.
Hey.
Wow. Thanks. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here to see you doing your great work. And I'm sending all my heartfelt gratitude to you and Dr. Rkhty Amen. I am your former student, and I am still writing. And what you're doing is confirming some of the thoughts that I had, because I think we're on the same thing, doing it in a different way.
Do it.
But it's really confirming. So I need connect with you because I haven't stopped writing, and I'm writing all the time. And there's one question I would like to ask you. What is the symbolism of the cobra over the third eye, on the pharaoh's head?
It represents the female fiery energy that protects the insubidi.
Okay, so it is protection.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. I see. Yeah.
Protection, but also offensive, because she burns your butt. If you mess around, Wadjet has no problem with filling you with her fire.
I want to ask you this question. Do you think that concept has been co-opted by the word Jesus Christ when the Romans named, or whoever named Jesus Christ?
Why? Because
to me the letter J over JE is over the third eye.
Okay.
And then I'm thinking of the word I'm thinking of the French word je suis, which is I am, but I'm looking at the SUS and sus, which is that little quail chick, which is consciousness. So that's how I'm putting that together. It's like
you're gonna have a problem, because you're mixing European ideas with Kemetic ones. They don't fit. You're gonna always have a problem. There's gonna always be there's gonna always be misalignment. That's the best way I could put it. We too often assume that these Netcher concepts represent what we feel and think they do in English, and most of the time they do not. You really, if for any concept, you're going to find that in Kemet, they have really a ton of text to explain how it's used. There's absolutely no need to interpret these ideas from a European perspective, because they are fully expressed in Kemet. And if you want to find additional expression of them, check out African culture. You would be a much saner and firm ground.
Okay, could you give me something specific? Because I thought I was looking at the concrete representation of those symbols rather than the abstract. So I'm still checking myself. That's why I'm asking.
So you want something particular in terms of, okay, something you said that the quail chick you felt represented consciousness, and I don't see that. Maybe you could explain why you feel that way.
Okay, I will tell you, it took me 5 years to try to get into that symbol, and then it struck me. And here's the way I put it together. It's like, oh my God, that little quail chick. I couldn't figure out why it was the letter U, and how we have consonants and vowels and all that stuff. Then when I looked at that baby quail chick, I said, oh my God, it's so cute. It's like, it represents, huh?
I was gonna say,
Okay, but I'm
if
looking
you saw
at how,
mine, you wouldn't think so.
huh?
If you saw my drawing of it, you wouldn't think it was so cute.
Okay, I'm looking at the quill
But
chick.
anyway, I
Okay,
got you.
but still, here's the things that I've been looking at, maybe how our deep thought was co-opted by other people. So I'm examining the letters and their words. I'm looking at that little quail chick. I said, oh my God, it's really cute. And what's cute like that? That the English and the French start using is like a child between 2 to 5 years of age. And like puppies, like little puppies.
Yeah.
And what do? They ask a lot of questions. There's that little you again. And the questions they ask are who, what, how, where, and why. So and then also if you put two quail chicks together, you have two, and you have twin, and you have W.
Ooh. Yeah.
Ooh,
Ooh.
ooh, right, right. Ooh, ooh.
Extended
Okay,
ooh.
right. So, but anyway, okay. Maybe what I'm doing different is I'm trying to explore even the English language by taking the words apart and
Yeah.
see how they use our knowledge to create their words. So I can take their words apart and say, I don't want that word, or this word is being weaponized, and so on and so forth.
Well, like I say, the best I can say is you will not have the problems of misalignment if you focus more on African languages in terms of trying to understand the Meta Netcher language. I keep saying this over and over again, you're going to always have problems with misalignment when you use European ideas. I don't care which language, you're going to always have, that problem. So I don't know, I don't know. That was the whole point of this lecture.
Right.
Show people that, well, okay, I think the next time what I'll do is I will take more ideas from African concepts to express some more, Meta Netcher concepts. Maybe that'll drive my point home a little bit more emphatically.
No, I think I got your point. I'm just, no, you did a great job of what you're doing, and I'm still trying to check myself and look at the focus that I'm doing. But anyway.
There's a saying I tell people, right? Learn to believe very little. Why? Because anytime you accept something as the truth, your brain and your heart, your air, will provide the rationale and the emotional content to support it. So, I tell people I don't read to know necessarily, I read for information. That information allows me to have enough information gathered so that at least my opinions are based on something I can show other people, So we kind of keep that in mind. We all have to learn how to check our concepts, our ideas, anything, or I should say, we tend to fall in love with our ideas and concepts. So you have to really, so something I do is, when I write something, I basically send it out to a lot of different people so that I can get their opinions, not only for errors, but just to get their opinions. Why? Because critique by those who love you is to make you better.
Right. I want you to go upside my head. And I'll send it to you because what I did was I tried to illustrate it with the actual pictures and let the pictures speak for themselves. So if I'm missing, I need to be upside the head and I will check myself. Okay, thank you. Thank you, SbA.
All right, next question, comment?
Yes, I did also have something. So SbA Bonotchi, Black Powerful presentation, as always. I put was kind of an inside joke in the chat. Was your presentation symbolic or symptomatic? You know.
This guy,
I know I'm dealing with.
He comes up with them, but that's definitely an inside joke.
All right.
Because one of the scholars have come up with this systematic or whatever symptomatic thinking, and that's like, wow, that's woo. That's a mouthful. But yes, no, it was not.
I hope it was neither.
Right, exactly.
Hey, me
Yeah,
pay.
I
Queen
thought.
Talawa has kidnapped my job, but I hope you'll give him back soon. But I wanted you to speak on the presentation, the course actually coming up on the tomb of Mdu Ntr.
Yes.
If you could briefly touch on that.
Yes.
This presentation itself, as I mentioned, was very, very blacktastic. There was one thing that I saw in terms of the word aAmu as it was written, is that it looks like the two A's, the first letter that we learn in the alphabet, and then the arm was represented as the vulture, and then was represented as the arm. It looks like it was transposed in the presentation, so I just wanted to point that out.
Do it.
But if you can just briefly speak to the upcoming course on Mdu Ntr, I definitely appreciate that. And, I always love your presentations. It's 11:24. That's why I was like, I hope we get started soon, because I know this is going to go. But I stuck through it, and I'm definitely all the better for it. Definitely appreciate everything that you shared, all the sentiments. Much appreciated.
Okay. Now, we are attempting something new, and that is we want to try to bring together those people who can translate and those who can't translate, because there's a ton of information that can be gathered from both sources. So I'm having a class where we're going to examine some of the images and translations from the tomb of Netcher. Netcher was a powerful governor in Kemet, and him and his wife has an elaborate tomb. So the tomb, what I want to focus on is to understand the translation in the text, but also the cultural information that can be gained from looking at the images and precisely the grapes. This symbol, this tomb is full of grapes, and grapes had a long, powerful history in Kemet. So what we're going to do is we're going to examine the Meta text along with cultural information that's represented by the images in the tomb. And I repeat, one of those images is going to be grapes. And so I'm going to really give you, or I should say, allow you to research the vast and dynamic way that grapes were used in Kemet. So grapes, they were used for wine, they were used for offerings, and they were used for what? For medicine. Because alcohol can be, I think grapes are probably one of the best fruits used to make alcohol from. So we're going to combine people to do research on the cultural information by reading books, and then those who can translate. At the end of the class, we should have enough organized information that maybe we could publish the findings. So, like I say, in this, the class starts in the middle, towards the end of February. Excuse me, a few weeks in January. Could you give me the date? I don't have the, I think it's the 23rd. I think it's January.
22nd.
January.
Second, also put the link in the chat.
Matter of fact, I'm going to be sending out the flyer again tomorrow for everyone. And like I say, this is a new class that we are starting at both institutes. This is going to be a joint class. It's going to be at Benitumi, but it'll also be associated with the Institute of Kemetic Philology also. So I repeat, this is a new class that we are attempting to bring together those people who can translate and those researchers who are just used to researching information in Kemet without a textual foundation. So this will be, we will put both of these aspects together and try to come up with a new way for us to express our knowledge and research skills involved in Kemetic.
All right, Black Powerful, definitely looking forward to that. I also use that text from Mdu Ntr in the classes that I teach at University of Ghana as well. So definitely looking forward to that. For all those who are online, if you enjoyed this presentation, I know you did, I definitely would invite you to take the 14-week course. Very, very deep knowledge that's shared. SbA Bonotchi is one of our foremost scholars, as all of us who are here know. And, you'll definitely be transformed in terms of the depth of your thinking and understanding from taking the course, beyond just the opinions that people share based on their illiteracy. Now we can actually have deep knowledge that will activate what it is that we need to be doing in the here and now with, correct methods. Tip-heseb. Habibi Tumi, Habibi Fahudi.
Well, there's no more questions. It looked like you had the last words.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention, Baba, which all the superlatives that could be said about your presentation have already been said, so I won't belabor the point. But
I don't mind. Go ahead. No, I'm just joking with you. Go ahead. I'm just joking with you.
Nah,
This
was a wonderful presentation. Like I really, and we talk about this stuff a lot, so just seeing it on the screen is different, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm glad I got access to the recording because I can watch it a few times before it comes out. But one thing I did want to point out, this is something I think about a lot, right? Is that people that go for this kind of information, one of the most dangerous elements to it is that you end up cutting off Kemet from the rest of Africa, right?
Yes.
Because there's a continuum, like when you're talking about like the technology, and then things like the astronomy and even the writing system, it was basically a group project, so to speak, coming from the people coming from, up the Hopi, and then the people converging from the Green Sahara, and all of that, and when you get into all of this other nonsense, it's like taking a giant, butcher knife and just dropping it, right? And you got Africa on this side, and then on this other side, you have Kemet and all of this other nonsense. And I think that that's something we should probably highlight a little more, I think, because it's ultimately it's dangerous to us. And I know, and the people who deal with this stuff, they don't even think about it like that, right? Because they tend to not look at Kemet as being a part of the rest of Africa anyway. So I just wanted to bring that up and just offer that as a point of contention along with what you put down here today. But yeah, Duau again for this. This was Neferu.
Kalawa. Yes.
Hotep Bob Bonotchi, always great as always. Always great as us. I did have a question, but I think it kind of led into brother Jid and Mark. I was gonna ask about the importance of also knowing contemporary African languages and being involved in contemporary African cultural practices as well, how that could help bridge that gap. But you kind of talked about it. So I'll go to my comment. I was going to say with Khrew, to your point about translate things in contemporary African languages, and the work we do with the poet, the love songs, and stuff. When you did Khrew, one of the things we can do in Caribbean languages, what some people call patois, some people call Creole, but trying to grow out of using those terms, we actually have things where you can chain the verbs together. So Khrew would be something like carry come or bring come. So you can capture the way that creator and creation are the same thing because it's in the way that the verbs run. So the rhythm of the verbs and the sequence are all one. So it's implied in the grammar. So it's also in obviously it comes from West African languages as well. So I know Obenfa would have a mouthful to say about that as well. But that was an example that came to mind.
Excellent, as always.
Hey, what's up, Baba Bonotchi?
Oh, I didn't see you here. What's up, my brother? Always good seeing Kamal Rashid.
Yes, sir. Very good seeing you, and really appreciated your presentation. I got we were able to get a glimpse of this during the ASCAC Midwest Region Conference, so
Yeah.
good to see it in its entirety. One thing I just wanted to highlight, which is very special to me about the presentation, is our community unfortunately abounds with people who are Asiaphiles.
Yes.
In love with the culture of India, China, Japan, or some other similar place. And rather than being honest that that's what they're into and promoting that as, again, those things as Asian, that is Indian, Chinese, the Japanese, or some other Asian type of practices, they seek to antedate these practices as being Kemetic.
Yes.
So, whatever it is that's Eurasian that they're in love with, it becomes somehow magically transformed into things Kemetic. And so one of the things that is very interesting is that whereas I think many of our people are more or less clear about the importance of us, delineating our perspective from European paradigms, we seem to be very, very susceptible to Asian, non-European, Eurasian paradigms, and seem to have very little qualms about painting these things, covering these things in black paint, and somehow claiming that they're in fact African. So at any rate, I appreciate the very righteous work that you're doing in terms of promoting a very clear and I think necessary and appropriate delineation in terms, or discernment rather, for African people. So Asante Sana Dua.
I would like to jump on that idea. I think early in the lecture, Monica mentioned that this needed to be a repeat session, and certainly it grows with the idea of continuing to identify those areas and those ideas that are incorrectly presented, that lead to our continued confusion, that actually deepen our confusion because it seems to be in some way wrapped in Kemetic ideas.
Yes.
So as we, when you start to, and taking Kemet across the continent, looking at the way the Dogon reflect some of the ideologies and some of the practices and theories that were presented in the Kemetic text. So this is a wealth of, this is the groundwork of something that is so deeply needed beyond just becoming a student of Kemet, but also knowing which words to believe, which methods, as you say, are correct, which ones are not, as you try to engage in the study. So yes, you need to do this once a month. Well, at least that's easily said, but you get the idea that this is something that needs to be ongoing and expanded until the pitfalls are all identified. And so we can begin to really carefully navigate the surfaces of this study without feeling like we're going to drop in a hole somewhere.
Yes.
Thank you.
I must say that this presentation came about because as a lifelong member of ASCAC, I started noticing how this metaphysical perspective, as the old scholars died off, the new ones start coming up with this crazy metaphysical stuff.
Cultural pimps, poverty and cultural pimps, when they see, because the people are hungry, the people want to know something, a lot of people, and so they start to gravitate to anything that starts to feel or appear to be of us when it really isn't.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I'm done. Thank you. Good to see you.
Heads up, everyone. Thank you, SbA Bonotchi. Heads up, Jedamak. It's good to see everyone.
Yes,
I was so
first time I've seen you.
Yes. Yeah, I'm in with the Jedamak, getting my head full. My brain is full every week. And so I just wanted to, say thank you for this presentation. when I was first introduced to learning about the Kemetic culture and spiritual practice, the only people that I was first told about were Mdu Ntr Amen and Muwada Ashby.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was kind of indoctrinated into that way of thinking, not even knowing that it was to my detriment that they took a Kemetic route through other cultures, and it really wasn't until I started taking classes in Mdu Netcher that I start to understand, that was really not the way that it was supposed to be. And Sanjeti, who was my first teacher, really emphasized, a correct study of things, what you're calling, this tip-heseb. And, so I'm very happy that I'm part of the Institute of Kemetic Philology, so that I can learn the correct way of thinking about things and processing the information, so thank you.
I've been hearing good things about you, so you're doing good work.
Thank you.
Yeah, Seshmeet is an excellent student. I always look forward to having her in class.
Thank you. And I love doing this. It's such a joy. And I'm just constantly learning, and the information, learning the truth is what makes you really connect to it. It doesn't have to be through this, this pseudo science stuff. It's not even necessary. But, people want to do shortcuts and take things the easy way,
Yeah, that's one thing is learning this language. It requires work, and our people are scared of work. We have there's a belief amongst our people, especially our youngsters, that there's something wrong with just reading a book. And it's like, that's one of the most evilest concepts, along with nonviolence. Non-reading is one of the most craziest concepts that have been, pushed down our people's throats. And I find the concept of nonviolence crazy. Every time you see a Black person on the TV, they always promote this idea that they don't promote violence. And I'm like, why is that? Why do we feel so honored to say that I don't promote violence? You do realize that sometimes getting your ass kicked is what you need, and it will straighten you up. And those who issue it are often the means of you being straight. So when you're in a position of being nonviolent, it doesn't make sense, because we're only taught to be nonviolent to white people. And that is obvious, because we kill each other at the drop of the hat. But ask anybody about violence and they tell you, I don't promote violence. But look at your children. All of them do. So who are you teaching? Because you're not teaching them to be nonviolent, because nonviolence only means don't hit or hurt white people. It don't mean don't kill anybody else. So we really have to look at these ideas and concepts and look at them more, realistically. One thing I think that African-centered scholars are going to have to switch to is to start back to focus on African-centered schools, because this focus on, abstractions of temples and all this stuff is not really changing the minds of our people. And right now, I'm sorry to say, but I'm pessimistic, because at this point, we don't own any other institutions that make stuff, even ideas, So we don't own institutions that influence how people think. We just respond to these institutions. So we're really going to have to stop and seriously consider that if we don't start to re-educate our children, and I don't mean homeschooling. Homeschooling is fine, you know, because at this point you don't have any other choice. And if you send your kids to public schools, you are poisoning, and you run the hassle of raising the enemy in your own house. So I do promote homeschools because they are good for that, but we have to realize that as long as we're on homeschooling, we're operating under the 10% ideal. The 10% ideal is what white people is promote. When I was in the military, they told us that we will allow for 10% to be out of whack, so to speak, because we can, as long as you're only at 10%, we can control you. So I saw that they operate like this in overall society. They keep Black nationalists at a low rate of influence because they play us off as being crazy, anti-Black, anti-white, anti-everything, so that our people no longer have faith in anything, especially it being Black, unless it comes from white people. So because of that, we no longer support anything Black. Is Black businesses, Black thought. So these are things we're really gonna have to change. And without changing the educational system, I think everything we do is a waste of time, because the educational system, they produce far too many niggers so that we can't produce enough sane people to counteract the niggerism that has taken over our people's minds. Okay, well, I think Obalele did not get the last word. He's used to that, getting the last word. Okay, so if that's not any more questions or comments, I really appreciate everybody's interest. Your questions and responses and have been most heartfelt. I'm happy to see that someone appreciates and understands what I'm trying to do. So with that, Shemotep, everyone.
Shemotep, Baba.
Shemotep, Baba.
Baba, everyone.
Dua.
Right.
Sure.